Welcome to the Worldbuilder's Anvil, episode 185. Today's topic, Game of Thrones and other confusing musings. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the Worldbuilder's Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. Welcome back. As always, I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram.
And fantastically yours, I am Michael Miller.
He's magically delicious.
That's what makes it fantastical. Because we're talking about fantasy.
Fantasy and doing sort of our first real look at Westeros. I don't think we've mentioned it several times throughout the show. It's come up, and season 7. For those of you who are hearing this, is about to start for us, so it's not yet started. So there will be no spoilers for season 7. We can't guarantee that the other seasons there might be stuff given away in this episode.
Yeah, we're definitely going to spoil the show. The show's been out for years. We're going to spoil the shit out of seasons 1 through 6. So if you haven't watched it, I'd advise skipping this episode, but we're going to talk about it freely, and if it should happen to spoil something, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
But season 7, you're all safe because it's not started for us, although when you're hearing this, it's already started. Okay, so what is the first thing you think about Westeros?
Is that
a very cool thing, and we're...
I was going to say, is that a generic question, or are you actually asking me?
I'll ask you. What's the first thing you think of when you think of Westeros?
Dragons and politics.
Dragons and politics. Yeah. That's probably it. You know, it's sort of in a way. I'm pretty sure it was inspired by the War of the Roses. Even the names and the ideas that you have, the Southerners and the Lannisters versus the people up north and the Starks, is sort of the main lead into and the idea of the show. Two great houses, sort of. The whole Yorkshire people versus the Lancasters during the War of the Roses in England. And up there was the Hadrian's Wall, and north of Hadrian's Wall, it was Scotland with the Scottish people who would come down and cause problems too. So a lot of similarities.
AKA the Wildlings.
AKA the Wildlings. So a lot of similarities with the world of medieval England. And even the crazy people coming across in ships. You could think of the Vikings who, before that, had come across in ships. So there was a history of that happening. So, the sea is nice, but maybe not nice enough. Maybe not wide enough.
When we were talking about this, Jeff wanted this show to be kind of a inside look at life of a peasant in the Westeros world.
Yes.
And then we kind of talked about it for a few minutes. We thought that might not be super interesting or might not cover a whole heck of a lot. So we will talk about it, but we're talking about a whole lot more too.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously there's no way we can cover 6 seasons of a show, which is approximately all of the books that have been released. I think the last season was the first season they went off book, I believe.
Yeah, they started to catch up to where he's actually at.
And so obviously the other book won't be out in time. So the idea is we're not going to cover the entire trilogy. There's some interesting things. Martin does a great job using like languages to sort of add a sort of depth and a real feel that this is actually a place that exists on its own, which I find very cool. You could tell he's obviously, as everyone is, he's been inspired by the things that probably came before him. And we're not going to get so much into that, but there are things that you can sort of point at and go, oh, that's a ripoff of this. No, whatever. This is a very unique world, sort of put together in a great way that made for a story that was really compelling, that turned into a TV show that was very compelling, and a lot of mature rated episodes. Oh,
we do like the mature television.
Well, it's nice. A lot of times fantasy gets delegated to children's material, and And that's unfortunate because fantasy, especially you get into like medieval politics specifically, not pretty. And so there will be a lot of not pretty things in this episode. If you do not like hearing about death and destruction, this is not the place for you. So now let's start off. When you get into it, it's really the core of the world isn't about the places. It's not about the races. It's really about the politics of everything. It's about power shifts that happen. And so you have essentially this idea of the great houses, and within there you have a series of minor houses which kind of get trapped in between. And then even with that, at the bottom, you have the peasants that are sort of at the bottom, of the spectrum and things that kind of tie stuff together. But it's about faction disputes. That's really what Game of Thrones is about.
While we're talking about houses, I'm just mentioning them here. So you've got House Aaron, House Baratheon, House Bolton, House Frey, House Greyjoy, House Lannister, House Martell, House Stark, House Targaryen, House Tully, House Tyrell, people of Essos, people of Westeros, royal court and officials. There's a lot of different people to keep track of in this story.
Yeah. Yeah, there really are several great houses, some of which become extinct-ish during the show, which isn't quite true. I know I'm on a fandom site right now, and they actually have House Baratheon listed as extinct.
That's
not quite true.
Not true, yeah.
Because there is a little bastard child, meaning that he was the son of the king and a woman, and not recognized as a formal child of the king, but still the blood of a king, who has survived. But the three royal-born Baratheons all died. And
that's ironic because they were not the king's children. They were...
Well, not them. I'm not talking about them because I don't consider them part of the Baratheon line.
Okay. I mean, they're considered, but they're actually not.
They are in the story, but just as once again, here comes the first spoiler.
Right.
The king's children, if you're watching season 1, if you're just starting right now, are not his children. There is a great joke with Game of Thrones, and that is, how do you make a king in Westeros? Mm-hmm. You put two twins together. And making a joke about beds and stuff there, too. So, yes. So that is how you make a king-size bed in Westeros. You put two twin-size beds together. And but the idea is Jaime and Cersei are two of the House Lannister characters who show up the entire series so far.
They are brother and sister, and
the
Cersei was married to Baratheon, Robert Baratheon, who is the king, and they had 3 children together, or so everybody thought. But in actuality, her children were sired by her brother Jaime. Ba-ba-ba-bum.
Which, okay, this leads me to my first Game of Thrones question that Michael needs to have a response for right now.
Go for it.
Okay, so they have this titling thing. So it's like, you are King Robert Baratheon, first of his name.
Yep.
Meaning, and then all of the other title stuff behind it.
Right.
How come everyone just happened to be the first of their name? I mean, there might have been one character who they talked about in the entire series of Kings that was not first of their name.
I think
there's very few that they've talked about.
I think it's because they are saying it's the first of their name in the line of that family.
But even that, the Mad King was just the second, and that house was around for 300 years, so they don't have a lot of repeat names, which I find offensive.
Offensive? What, because you're looking for Jeffrey?
Like King Pius the 34th. Come on, you need a King Pius the 34th.
I don't know what to tell you. I guess they wanted each person to have their own.
They don't respect first names, maybe.
Individualism. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I know, in Europe itself, a lot of times you would change your name, I think, when you became king. I'm not positive on that, but I think, at least for a while, you would take maybe that was just popes that did that. I don't know. I'm probably confusing things. There
Probably.
just doesn't seem to be enough repeat names for me. But whatever. That's not even a critique. That's more of just a thing that caught my eye. I would have figured Westeros has been around for 1,000 years since the last Great Winter. You figured there would be at least a fifth of something. You know, a fifth of King Jack, fifth of his name.
Right. No, I agree.
That was
I
very
remember
amusing
when
to
they
me.
were saying that sort of stuff too, and I agree. There should have been a lot more names that came up more often than not.
And I do agree you might be able to get away with it, with the fact saying maybe it really is like if you're the third King Robert, but the first of House Baratheon, then maybe it's first of your name again, even though you're Richard III. Who cares? Not a major thing, but it's always one of those things that caught my mind. But once again, it's not even a critique of the world, but really as a world builder, you think about, I've obsessed and thought about this other world. So it's these little things that you can bring together as a world builder when you're making your world that, you know, really some people might even critique. I personally don't consider this a critique, but that's the thing that makes it unique.
Let's say it this way. Here's the real question. The real question is, why say the first of his name if more often than not there is no second? Why wouldn't you only say the second of his name if he happens to be a second? And then if they're the first, you just assume they're the first if nothing else follows that statement.
I think that's because
his name is Jon Snow. And that's it. You know, you don't have to say first of his name unless he's a second, then you would say second of his name.
But I think it's to distinguish the importance of the king, and he gets extra words used about him.
But they do that didn't they do that with a lot of people, not just the king?
No, I think it's just the kings that get the.
They certainly did it when he was going through the book and reading the royal families, but those were obviously members of the royal family. So,
but I think those were kings that were in the book. Or are you talking about the only book I remember referring to was the Knights, and I don't remember them using first of the name for the King's Guard. They went over that book earlier, and someone flipped over to Jamie's page and sort of taunted him that when he had his hand severed during one of the seasons, and like some of the people would have like 4 or 5 or 6 pages talking about the captain of the King's Guard, the people who were supposed to protect the king. And his was a half a page. And mainly it was mostly about him killing the first king he was a King's Guard for,
right,
which was the Mad King.
Yeah. I think we're spending a lot more time. We're keying right in on some minutia about how they choose to like talk about names. I don't think we need to be spending all this time doing that.
Okay, so let's move on a little bit. One of the other things that the show brings up,
small annoyance.
One of these things that is also interesting about it, which it brings up this idea that recurs throughout many different cultures, not just even Western cultures. This idea of who has the right to claim stuff, you know, and this show gets into it where at the beginning you have House Baratheon, who their line is in the lineage of the kings, but the Targaryens who were not slaughtered off when the last Targaryen king was killed, they all still had what was called the Mad King. They still had the ability they had a claim on the throne, which meant they could legitimately start a civil war to retake the throne and would be recognized as the king and or queen, obviously, if the throne was retaken, you know, and this medieval thing where it's even like this, like Latin word they had for it, a casus bell, which is probably pronounced wrong, but is this idea that you had a right to something, and it might be something that is a kingdom, or you might have a claim over another lord's land. Like I have a claim over Count Michael's land because I have this piece of paper that says my 15th cousin was married to your 34th aunt, and I also have, therefore, a claim to your throne. And there's even quite a industry in medieval Europe, and I'm sure in Westeros as well, where these claims could be manufactured and then be pushed, even though the legitimacy was questionable. But a lot of times it's ultimately armies in medieval times or in fantasy realms that legitimize claims.
Well, that's like Bronn has earned himself a wife and lands after, moving up in ranks under what's Peter Dinklage's character name? Tyrion. Tyrion.
Oh, Tyrion.
Tyrion Lannister. So he's under Tyrion Lannister. He earns himself a marriage and lands and a place to be, which is why once the mountain is put up against Tyrion
the Prince of Dawn
for killing Joffrey, he needs to choose a champion, and that's why Bronn won't do it, because at that point Bronn had shit to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, he didn't have things to lose, which is why he made the risky endeavor of being his champion back when they were in that other place with the moon door there. He didn't have anything to lose. He just had to gain by doing it. So that's why he did it.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting because he was a sellsword and now he's a noble.
And that's very clever too, because he's a very effective character in the series. And it shows one of the things that you do as a king or a lord is you have vassal positions and offices that you distribute out to try and get people to owe you something. And to actually try and create discontent between the minor houses underneath you. So, we talk about the great houses. There are a lot more houses that aren't even considered great because they don't have enough lands, or they're in a really bad spot, so they're really poor. They don't have the type of money or people to back them up like, say, the Starks or the Lannisters do. But, that's a way, though, if you're a greater house, you could use the wealth, you could use positions and offices to get people to fight. And we talked about this a little bit in the court episode as well, too. This is how kings deal with stuff. And so they took out a major piece, and who knows if Bronn could have beaten the mountain. I think he could have. I think he could.
I think he'd figure out a way. I mean, Bronn...
Because I think, unlike the prince... he wouldn't have tried to slow it down to force a confession. And
no. He would have just he just would have killed him. Any chance he got.
When he got the chance, it would have been done.
Yeah.
Or if you, like you said, the problem for him too is you fight someone like the Mountain, this like really large fighting guy. You make one mistake as a small guy, you're done.
Yeah. You have to be. I mean, and the other guy had him. He was fast. He was dodging. Mm-hmm. He didn't take any hits until he got killed. I think he took one like relatively minor hit that like I think one of his staffs was broken, if I'm not mistaken. It's been so long since I watched that fight. But once he started getting hit, like it's like that was it. It was like he was dying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, and the thing to keep in mind too when you watch it is like a lot of the Civil War that's happening isn't necessarily fighting for the throne. So like the Stark invasion into the South, which is several seasons of the show, has nothing to do with even trying to. They've claimed that independence for the North, which is where there used to be one of the seven kingdoms, and they're declaring their independence, but they're not trying to take the. They're trying to take the Iron Throne, but not to occupy it because they don't have the rightful position to it, and they're not even trying to play for it, at least through season 6. Who knows what happens after season 6, but it will be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah. What I like is all of the weird interactions, like all the stuff that happens at like the bannerman and nobleman level and up. Well, like Jeff and I were just talking before we started recording, and one of Jeff's favorite characters, and I still haven't found her yet.
Lyanna Mormont.
Mormont. Yeah. So the thing about Lyanna is that she turns the tide of what's going to happen in the North simply by having an opinion. It's
and this girl, boy, does she have opinions.
Yes, she has opinions, and she is not afraid to express them strongly. So she comes to the aid of Sansa and Jon Snow, and by lending her men and her support. And
62-minute arms.
62 men. It's not a lot, and they were concerned that that's what it was. And she was like, each one of ours fights like 10 others. Which I wanted to see something representing that during that battle, and I didn't quite see that. Not that anyone did poorly, but I wanted to see guys doing particularly well, so that you could be like, oh yeah, those are her men. They're that nasty.
Yeah.
But also, Jon Snow and Sansa spoke, and they pretty much agreed that Sansa will be the leader. Jon wasn't all that interested in leading since, he was leading at the wall, and then he's like, I don't want to lead anymore, with all the shit that I've been through. And then Mormont is like, Jon is my king. Jon is my king in the north. King of the north. And then everyone jumped on the bandwagon. And it's like, she just made a leader. Yeah.
And from a story scene, that was wonderful too, because it was, I think, a little more unsettled than what you said. I think Jon had determined Stanza was supposed to take that. But I think Stanza wanted Jon to take that role.
You think so?
She argued that. I do. I think so.
She thought he should, but I think that she thinks deep down that she should, because she's become a much more powerful woman now. And she's becoming
and that could be true, yeah.
And
that's one of those that could definitely be true, but from what she said, which is why I have to go off of what she's true, and she could be lying, because that's part of the game. This is really, even though it's big battles, the thing that I love about Game of Thrones, it's really about the character battles. And sometimes they're so wealthy and they have these armies that sometimes the character battles end up with real men dying, which in real life sucks.
See, I don't mind the dying over an argument. I've got no problems with that. Like, I like it that it gets amped up and then people just get killed,
It makes for good television entertainment. I wouldn't want to live there, but it makes for good television.
Well, I mean, you think about how different a world we would live in if you could get into an argument with somebody and then it came to, all right, well, we're going to settle this with swords right now because that's how we do it.
Well, I think the difference is at this point of the evolution of our world, we say it's not okay, but it still happens in the U.S. all the time. We call it illegal, and sometimes people go to prison for it, but it still happens all the time. Where if you go back 500 years, probably not even that long. I mean, you figure like Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary of the United States, was shot and killed in a gun duel.
Yeah, but, back in a day where there needed to be, I mean, anyone could pick up a gun and fire a gun. Not everybody can pick up a sword and know how to fight.
Yeah, but with those kind of guns back in those days, I mean, you're essentially at the same range as a sword to be able to hit someone. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It's different. But, the thing is, it does take more, but people who lived in those conditions were able to do it. So, if that's all we had today, who knows if there would be any difference. I would hope there is. I like to think we're evolving.
It also, gives you an idea of just how strong people's convictions were. They're like, I know that I will die over this thought or over this thing that I'm shooting for, and I'm willing to fight, you and you and you and you to do this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
that's why I have to say I really respected Ned Stark's character in the first season because just watching it, you knew it was a train wreck coming. It was quite apparent that he was making the right choices from a philosophical standpoint. From a
loyalty standpoint. A lot of his decisions were loyalty based.
Yeah, and but he was in way over his head when it came to the political intrigue of a court, and boy, that cost him his head.
Yeah, it didn't have to, and it was told it wouldn't. Now, one of the things this is right here is a good segue into the peasant discussion that originally spawned this episode. So Ned Stark gets beheaded, And then in a town that is, I believe, a lot further away.
Bravos.
Bravos. I'm not sure far physically. I'd have to look on a map how far Bravos is.
It's across the Narrow Sea.
Okay. So then in Bravos, Arya sees a street play, and they are portraying her father negatively. But as far as the peasants would know, they would just know the major details. And Ned did confess to treason.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as they know, he's a traitor, a treasonous, SOB that was trying to gank the throne for himself because he said so. So now that's all he'll be remembered as. Oh, you guys remember Ned Stark?
The story.
Oh, yeah, the traitor who tried to get the throne from the king, his best friend.
And that leads into another great discussion too of this is how peasants are used in the ancient society. The nation states are really more about who the house is. The Roman Empire, we call it that, but it was really the series of people just agreeing that, that person's Roman and he's in charge and his family's in charge. But they weren't like nation states like we have in the modern world. It was really more about who ruled them. And it's really, but the way you use the peasantry is stuff like that is you figure, and part of me wonders, was that actual propaganda? Or was that just taken from an event that happened and turned into a cool story? Because the peasants, the only real joy you get in life is the comings and goings of kings. Your life is probably directly, very, very few circumstances would you be affected by who the ruler is, especially the farther you live from a capital. Kings don't have the power or the ability to communicate quickly enough to go kill that guy over there. And then 3 months later, when the message gets out to the governor, he can go kill the guy who's now gone. So if you lived close to in the city of the king, most definitely they'd have a big impact on you. But much further than that, they would have very little impact on who the ruler was.
If you're Johnny Farm Guy, then you're like, 5, 10, 12 days ride outside the city. Even that's not terribly far. But if you're like 2 months outside the city, you're not going to hear much, and you're not going to care because you're just like, I'm just on my farm, just trying to keep my family alive.
You're going to hear stories about King Joffrey and go, wow, if that's true, he's a jerk, but you wouldn't feel it like some of the peasants around him, like when you're in the square where he's like, kill them all. That's going to cause a little riot. But that's really the effect of peasants, is like if you're right there at the moment, it sucks. But if you're not right there at the moment, it probably means very little to you. Now, typically where it becomes offensive is if someone you consider of a different nationality, with their different ways, come over and start imposing their ways on you. That's usually where historically you would have trouble in invasions is, you are no longer Hellenized Greeks, you are now controlled by Persia, that's, if you tell me you have to act like me, if I have to act like the new emperor or the new king, that will turn me against you. If I'm forced to worship your gods, I might be turned against that. But just because I have a new king and maybe even a foreigner, I might not mind if I don't see them too much.
Yeah, so our thoughts were that basically if you're a peasant, you probably don't care a whole heck of a lot. But you're also probably gonna get, as with most of the public got, very inaccurate stories as to what's actually going on. And that seems true like with our own government. There's a lot of stuff going on behind closed doors that we're not getting all the information on. We're just getting what it looks like. Just like in Westeros, they didn't get the full story. They just got what it looks like, and that's what inspired the play. It was really just a recounting of recent political events when it wasn't accurate at all. Because they portrayed Ned Stark like a braggart who was trying to overthrow the kingdom, and that's not at all what his character was like, nor what his actions were.
And Tyrell was the evil little dwarf that actually murdered the king, which everyone knows he did not. But he was accused for it and fled for it, and did murder his father. That part was true.
Yes.
But his father was a jerk.
His father deserved to die on the can.
Yeah.
What surprises me is that his girlfriend Shay wasn't a little more understanding, and I'm very surprised that she then went off with the father. Now, granted, she probably didn't have a choice in the matter, but she did.
I think she did because she
seem to
was
mind.
put on the ship.
She didn't.
She was put on the ship. She was put on the ship. She had to choose to get off of that ship. You know, it's like Tyrion had her delivered and put onto the ship to take her to safety.
But at that point, she didn't. There was a different reason for her staying. It's not like she stayed to then go run off with his father.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I'm kind of with you with that one. Was I liked her character, and I don't know if like they just did a good job of covering up that she really was just a whore and was just in it for herself, and she just played the role she needed to at the time. Because I don't get that feeling from watching the scenes that they interacted in alone together. But maybe that's just the art of how good she was, or maybe it's just like there were a few times in her character where she seemed extraordinarily unreasonable with what was going on, and so maybe there's just a naivete about her character and this sort of passionate, strong woman who didn't quite really get it. I don't know. I tend to prefer to think it's the latter.
Who's your favorite character on the show?
Oh, my favorite character.
Or top 3 or 4. Like whatever you can sum.
I would have to say probably Tyrell Lannister.
The father?
The dwarf. I mix up
Tyrion.
names. Tyrion, I'm sorry. Tyrion the dwarf is probably my favorite character. Attitude I love. He's in the game. But he's playing it from a different angle of other people. He understands he could never be, and that's maybe part of it, is he understands he could never be king.
And he understands his place and how he understands how he can be super influential. Yeah.
And, the way when he stepped up as the hand of the king, and he did a great job protecting the city from the queen and her plan to defend it versus letting the city fall. He did a great job, holding off the city and protecting King's Landing and protecting the king who he hated.
Yep.
But it was his.
You know what? I don't know. Did he hate him? I know he didn't.
Yes, he did.
I know he didn't like him.
Yes, he hated him.
He hated him.
I don't think at the beginning he did, but by the time they got to the Battle of Blackwater, after he had tortured the prostitutes that he sent to try and distract him into a different way of being a sadist, he knew he was a sadist. He would have never tried to kill him, but he thought he was an evil person.
Yeah, but thinking that and hating a person are two different things. I think there was
his loyalty was to the realm, not to Joffrey.
I get that 100%. But my thought is, I don't know that it was ever hate. I think it was disappointment. I think it was, a great deal of it, I think, was disappointment. Was like, why can't you be a better man? We've been trying to teach you this. Like, why do you have to be killing people? You don't have to be doing that.
I think it started off that way. But I think it turned into, he's just evil, and we need to try and stop him from doing what he wants to do. Yeah. And by that point, I think he hated him. And part of it, too, was because Cersei protected it, and he hates Cersei, and she hates him. And Joffrey, to him, is Cersei made into a boy.
Yeah.
But once again, that's just conjecture, because he never said it. He definitely never said it.
I think my favorite character is the Mountain. So
the Mountain? Really?
I'm not going to get it. But what I would really like this whole season to be is every episode him methodically killing everyone in that universe.
He might.
I'd like to see the Mountain systematically kill everyone, even all my favorite characters, even the good guys and the bad guys, just everybody, because that would be so funny and so satisfying to me. And then in the very last episode, we can have the climactic battle between the Mountain and the Hound that we're sure to get before the end of this show.
Oh, it has to happen. I prefer the Hound over the Mountain, but I guess I just prefer
the Hound as a character is way better. Like, I definitely like the Hound more than the Mountain. But
I see where you're coming at with that.
Me liking the Mountain and just wanting to see the Mountain destroy everyone, that's just a sick fantasy for Game of Thrones that I have in my mind that I would love to see. Well, here's the big thing. They spent, like, all of last season teasing us. They showed a little bit of what the Mountain can do. He cleaved the head off a horse with one shot. He was slicing these. This wasn't impressive. I don't know why they showed us this. When he was like killing homeless men with like a single shot, he was having them attack him when he had no armor on, and they were also not wearing armor, and they were also like 1/4 of his weight. So it's like, this is also not impressive. The guy's gigantic. But then when we finally got to see him fight against the serpent, and then when he was brought back and the guys from the religion came after him and they put a mace in his chest and he just stood there like it was nothing.
Yeah, but at that point, I don't know how much he is like not undead at this point.
I think he is undead at this point.
Yeah, I think he might be too. It's because he's obviously really messed up underneath there.
Of course.
Maybe he doesn't feel pain. But I kind of think he's already undead, but we don't really know that.
My point is that part of I felt really underwhelmed by the time we got to the end of last season, and we didn't get to see the Mountain really do anything. I'm like, Cersei came out of the Walk of Shame wanting vengeance that was clearly going to be instituted by the Mountain. Like, he said something like, before he took his vow of silence, one of the things he said was that Cersei, he's going to make all of Cersei's enemies pay. And I'm like, oh, yes. I'm like, I can't.
Or that's what we're told.
Well, the thing is, and then she blows the church up. I wanted to see the Mountain get into a fight with like 30 dudes from the church. So when it was like 4 of them that surrounded him, I'm like, oh, this will be nice. And he just tears the head off of one, which was great. Don't get me wrong. But I was like, now do it to the rest of them.
Yeah. Well, one, I think they want to show that how much she controls him. I do have a feeling early in season 7, anyone anti House Lannister who's in King's Landing is going to see the Mountain.
Yeah.
I think the Mountain will start Mike's Sick Fantasy. I don't think Mike's Sick Fantasy will play out in the actual show.
Definitely not. If I get one scene where he gets to kill a few people before we get to see the Hound versus the Mountain, that would be nice. But I want to see him really go to town. I want to know how powerful he is. Beyond that, I love Littlefinger. I love, of course,
he's a great character.
I love Tyrion. Gosh, who's my favorite? I don't really know. I mean, probably Tyrion. Probably Tyrion or Littlefinger. I like Littlefinger a lot. I don't like him as a person. I like him as a character because he's kind of a scumbag.
Well, I know what you're saying. I mean, just because you like a character doesn't mean like you necessarily approve of their actions.
Yeah. I mean, he betrays Ned. He betrays the wife, even though, he loves her. He's betrayed the daughter. He deserves to die. But he's still still very useful, though, which is the only reason Sansa didn't have.
She needs, they need the knights.
Yeah, Lady, what's her name? The big chick.
Brianna.
Thank you. Brianna of Tarth.
Yes.
Let's see.
Well, you want to know what I'll say, though? Like, I would have to say she's actually a close second to be for favorite characters.
I like Cersei a heck of a lot, too, actually.
Well, I've grown to like Cersei has grown on me as a character as she's grown as a character. But I say like Brianna is very much what you think of as like this classic sort of Western ideological knight. And she just pulls it off and nails it. She really, she nails what, if all of the knights of the realm had her honor, the game would not exist.
Yeah, it would be be a very different realm if that were the case. Sam's a fun character. Grey Worm, I like Grey Worm a lot.
Spider. The Spider.
I like the Spider.
Yep.
Of course.
I mean, this show has so many great characters, and like you will hate. I mean, the reason you hate some of these people are because they are so good at their characters.
So good. Davos, I like a lot.
I like Mansa. I thought he was very good.
Which one? Which one's? Oh wait, he was the leader of the.
He was the king of the king of the North. The Northy North.
Yes. Yep. The Northy North. As the Northy North people.
yeah.
He's
him and Maki. He's well, I was sitting there because it's like you see a lot of that. Not a lot, but you see some of these characters who were major in Rome show up here as semi-important characters. It's kind of cool. I believe the Ice King himself is actually one of the two main characters from Rome as well. They showed his face as it turned to ice when the White Walkers were created.
Yeah, that's true.
And I have to say, let's go to most emotional scene. Let's wrap it up with what was the most emotional scene.
One other thing I wanted to mention is that
okay, go ahead.
Gendry is still out there somewhere. Gendry also has a claim to the throne, being the son of Baratheon.
That's the Baratheon's bastard son.
Yeah, he was last seen rowing a boat out to nowhere, and we never heard from him again. Yeah. So it's like, well, where did that guy go?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that he's just brushed under the carpet since Daenerys is now in Westeros, that's where it's at.
Oh yeah. Here come the dragons.
So emotional scenes, and we have to remove the red wedding from it being eligible because you can't.
We'll go to favorite scenes, and we can remove that one because it's actually not my favorite scene. That was a clever bit of politics unfurling there, but it was definitely not close to my favorite.
But it was very emotional. It was a very emotional sequence.
It was definitely a very emotional scene, and it was executed very well.
Okay, so here's a not emotional scene, but one of my favorite scenes was Bronn's first fight for Tyrion at the Moon Door when he championed him and killed the other guy.
Sir, you have no honor.
She's like, you fight without honor. And he's like, he did. Just nodding his head to the hole.
As the guy fell 1,000 feet.
Yeah, that his enemy just plummeted to his doom through. And I'm just like, yeah, you play to win.
No, he's up there. I mean, there's so many characters that I could call my favorite.
Yeah, that scene, though, I'm a big fan of that.
That was a great scene. I would say my favorite scene, and this is my favorite scene of the show, and it shows the good writing of the show too. It's my favorite scene for many levels. It has emotion and it has it all. It is exiting the tree.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, Hodor holding the door.
Yes, I had said a long time prior that if he gets his name because he's holding a door, I'm going to be pissed. And that's how he got his name. And I'm like, that's just fucking annoying. But they also did it beautifully. So I can't take anything away from
the way they unveiled it with the kid witnessing him becoming Hodor. And I believe at the moment he knew his death.
Yes.
He didn't know it walking that hallway.
Yes.
He might have known it when he was blocking the door. I think he did.
Yeah.
But I think he turned into that character seeing that moment.
I agree. I think that Bran pulled his consciousness into the future while he was tapping into his consciousness in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really messed his mind. Yeah, I think it really messed his mind up. Mm-hmm. But I do believe I agree with you. I think that the thing that I think is stupid is his name was Wallace. He spoke. Everybody knew him.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they stop calling him Wallace just because he can't say? Clearly, he understands shit, and he's not saying shit any different than using the word Hodor. But there's no need to not call him by his name. Everyone knew his fucking name. So I was annoyed by that.
All right. Do you have one more scene for us here? Quickly?
I'm looking. Let me quickly scan the character list here just to see if they're going to jog my memory of a favorite scene.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love Drogo. I'm trying to think of what would be a good scene for him.
Drogo.
Call Drogo. But I think we can do better than that. Oh, Ramsay Bolton.
Yeah, because he wasn't...
Ramsay Bolton being fed to dogs.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
That was actually good. That was going to be the second scene I mentioned. The Sansa Stark feeding Ramsay Bolton to the dogs.
Yeah.
Really just...
That was
I hated
pretty good. And obviously he's a character he's designed for us to hate.
You're supposed to feel great when he does.
Yeah.
And I did. The scene worked perfectly on me.
Just like Jorah Mormont, you're supposed to root for. I am actually hoping, because Daenerys orders him to find a cure for himself, that he gets to live. I'm really hoping that he gets to find a cure for himself and gets to return to her. Because like that, her giving him that order, that was awesome. So,
well, you want me to tell you what I would do with him as a storyteller?
What?
I would give him the cure, and he would never make it back to her.
See, I would have him like either he can't get to the cure, or he gets the cure but for some reason can't take it, and he returns to her and he is slowly turning. So by the time he gets to her, he gets to say some last words, and then that's it. He turns into like one of the stone men. Yeah,
no, I would have him die. Maybe him seeing her one last time, but never truly getting to her.
Yeah.
One of those emotional, painful jerk scenes.
Tormund Giantsbane. He is just, I love that guy. And whenever he's on screen, he's fun. He's the redheaded dude with the super big red beard.
Well, I tell you, when he gets introduced to Brianna.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, all of that.
And every time those two are on camera, that is so fabulously taken care of. I love that. And they don't play it up, but it's there in the background.
Well, they played it up that one where he's like smiling at her real big while they're riding
on the horses.
Yeah.
But it was lit up before that. So, yeah, you're right. It was played up a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit there. So, but yeah. So, needless to say, Jeff and I are both very excited. For next week. For us, it'll be next week. You'll be listening to this episode probably 2 or 3 weeks after Game of Thrones has already been back on.
Those guys are so slow.
Yeah, but it starts for us next week, and I'm not even. It starts for us in like 4 days, and I'm very excited to get going again. I can't wait to be back in Westeros.
So for your world building task of the day, take a character, a lord of a different land or of the same land, and sit there and just brainstorm out how he could take over the kingdom, the main kingdom. You don't have to even do a story on it, but just think it out. Like, who would he need? What are the things that he could use against the current ruler to cause for him to take over the world,
the throne? What resources?
And if the stories that you write in your world building involve that, have him killed off and have it be someone else.
The real world task for today is if you are experiencing summer right now, which we are, go buy an air conditioner. It's getting stupidly hot out. I am in the main area of my apartment, which is where I have to record, and it's hot in here, where I'd rather be in the back bedroom where the air conditioner is, but the air conditioner makes too much noise for us to record. So,
it is the price for delivering this great content that Michael's willing to pay for you guys.
Suffer for my art.
That's right.
For you guys.
Right. And not for me. He wouldn't do it for me. It's for you guys.
No, I definitely wouldn't do it for Jeff. It's for you guys. So,
everyone have a great week.
No. One more thing. Gotta do some.
We have some shout outs.
Yeah, we got some serious shout outs. I gotta.
Hope you listen to the end.
Pull it up on my show, my notes here. So, shout outs to new people. Shout outs to new people who have joined the closed Facebook group. Joey, Roko Nuzanaman, Lynn, Lee, and Christopher. And really cool because I got I'm going to shorten it to Roku because I'm not sure about if I'm appropriately saying the rest of his name. But Roko or Roko is, I believe, in Bangladesh, and Christopher is in Berlin. So that's exciting. I love seeing that we're getting listeners all over the world. And Christopher, I'm actually going to be in Berlin very soon. So
I do believe we're in over 80 countries. We have downloads in over 80 countries.
That's very cool.
So.
But I like that we're seeing some of those people finally make their way into
the group.
Facebook.
Yeah.
So if you're not a part of the Facebook group, feel free to join us over at Facebook at the World Builders Undercroft closed Facebook group.
And the URL is facebook.com/groups/Undercroft.
Or if you just look up Undercroft, you'll find us because there's no other Undercroft. So.
Thank you so much for listening to the World Builders Anvil. We would love it if you would share the World Builders Anvil with 2 of your friends, and so would they. If they are unfamiliar with podcasts, then you get to introduce them to the wonderful world of podcasting by showing them Stitcher or iTunes, or, best of all, just send them to our website, www.gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com.
Now strike while the mithril's hot.